Alright guys, we are gonna do a Nekoma school team building guide today, and that's because Yaku is finally in the game, so we have at least now 4 characters from the school, which are at least SSR rarity or higher. Previously, without Yaku, the best you can do would be involving some SR characters, which is still fine because there are actually a few SR characters from Nekoma school, which are actually very, very strong. However, obviously, your team power is going to be lower than if you are going for a full team of SSRs. That's kind of why I didn't feel like the Nekoma team was quite mature back then. But now you can definitely go and have a full SSR or higher rarity team. And that's kind of why I feel like it's a good time for me to start talking about some team building guide for Nekoma. Now, I just want to clarify first of all that this video is only going to be about Nekoma School Bond. I'm not actually going to talk about receiving team in general because I know a lot of time you are kind of like mixing the team speciality, for example, your block will receive or quick spike or power spike alongside with the school bond because each school tend to have one speciality, and that is certainly the case for Nekoma. Nekoma is all about receiving. However, the reason why I'm gonna limit the scope of this video purely for the school bond is because in the future, eventually because you are only going to have, as of right now in JP and also Taiwan, only 2 characters from Nekoma School are actually of SP or UR rarity. So basically, we wouldn't even get an SP or UR version of Yaku or Lief. And even though Yaku, for example, is still very good, I still think he is like a UR standard character. Lief certainly lacks in comparison to other potential UR or SP character you can get instead. So that's kind of why endgame receiving teams are not going to be so much focused on Nekoma School Bond. It's actually going to be more of like a mix and match. And in fact, I will show you what I think personally is going to be the best endgame for receiving team. It's probably going to look something like this, where you actually have 3 mid blockers. So this is only going to be viable once we have that update, which JP just had recently, where we have no longer that position limit, and therefore we can actually play 3 mid blockers in the same team. But the reason why this is actually very strong is because out of all of the 7 members here, the only one without a receiving label is going to be Suki. Everyone else here all have a receiving label. So that's kind of why even though you have the like the Sakusa and also Hoshiyumi, their win spiker, they can still have received pretty well and contribute to your speciality bonus as well. And then outside of that, you also get a natural player bond. So you have the one between Komori and also Sakusa, and then you have one between Hinata and Kenma. You have one between Hinata and also Suki. Then you have another one between Suki and Kuro. Then you have another one between Kuro and Kenma. So literally, you have like all kind of mix and match of character bonds within this team. So that's kind of what I feel like it would be the best receiving team in the end game. But I'm not going to talk about that in this video because, like I said, this video is going to be dedicated to Nekoma School, okay? And that's kind of what I have already started by putting out those full SSR characters. Now, before actually talking about the teams, I do want to give an honorable mention to one SR character, which I do feel like kind of works here as well. He is only going to be an SR character, so your overall team rating would be slightly lower than, let's say, if you play a full team of SSR. However, if you do manage to get him to very high dupes, then potentially he can still have similar power level. But that's going to be the character I am going to show you guys. Oh, actually, no. Sorry, this team builders I only have SSR or higher characters. But basically the character I wanted to show you guys here would have been Yamamoto. And the reason why Yamamoto is very, very good is it kind of plays alongside with the playstyle of Nekoma team. Now, when we talk about playstyle of Nekoma team, you may be thinking receiving. However, you have to think a bit further, like what is actually going to be your win condition with a receiving team? Yes, you can keep on receiving the ball all the time, but how are you actually going to win the point, right? Because unlike block, where you can get a block kill, or spike, you can get a spike kill regardless of whether it's power spike or quick spike, you can't get a receive kill. So how are you actually going to get a point here? And that is going to be a huge determining factor in terms of how you want to build your build your team. And to me, there are kind of like 2 ways of how you can go about winning points with a Nekoma team. One is going to be focusing on your quick spikes because you do have Kuro who have actually very strong quick spike, and especially if you can actually get him to dupe 2, then you can actually spam his quick spike as well. And then you also get Leaf, who also is actually more of like a quick spiking mid blocker rather than a defensive blocking mid blocker as well. So that's you are definitely getting very good quick spiking options here. So even though you are playing with like a receiving specialty, you can actually make yourself more kind of trying to win points with the quick spikes, especially also with Yaku also able to buff your quick spikes. So that's definitely going to be one potential strategy you can go down with Nekoma. So it's kind of like a Nekoma quick spike team. But then you also have the other option of actually not going for quick spike to win the match, but actually just slowing wear down the opponent. And that is basically literally just by it's kind of how this original series go, right? Nekoma school always keep the ball up, and eventually you're just going to wear down the opponent. You're just going to make them tired. You're going to make them run out of stamina, so they're no longer able to use their skills. All of their stats are going to be reduced to half, etc. And therefore, you just naturally win some points that way, even though none of your attacks are particularly strong. And that is going to be another viable option of how to build a Nekoma team. And that's where Yamamoto would then actually become very important because Yamamoto actually have that ability of restoring stamina. And that's kind of what's going to make the second strategy of Nekoma going to be viable because you are going to make sure you always have more stamina than your opponents. Therefore, by the time your opponents are getting to reduce stats and also no longer able to use their skills, you are still absolutely fine. You can still keep up with all of your skill rotations, etc. And that's how you can also win the points that way. So obviously, Yamamoto is going to be one very viable option there. And then the other option you can also go down would be the likes of Kita in the future because Kita also have the ability of restoring stamina. So that's kind of why Kita is going to be essentially an upgrade for Yamamoto in the future. Okay. Now let's just start off with this one. So the strategies of how to wear down the opponent. Like I said, the main idea here is that you want to make sure your stamina is higher than the opponent's. So in terms of your opposite hitter, normally the option you want here is going to be someone once again capable of restoring stamina, and also preferably someone with good receiving skill because your Nekma team is all about receives, right? And obviously, if you actually combine those two conditions together, there's one very natural choice here. It's going to be Daichi. Daichi is the best defensive opposite hitter out here. In fact, if I just show you all of the opposite hitter, you would then realize, for example, he's for blocking, he's for spiking, he's for spiking as well. And then this one from Fukurodani is a bit more of like a combo, able to do with everything. But obviously Daichi is the one which stands out a lot more defensively. And not to mention, he also have the ability to restore stamina. So he's going to be your natural option here if you do actually want to go down the route of actually wearing down your opponent. And then in terms of the wind spiker, you can kind of, once again, you can also play Yamamoto here, right? You can make sure you get your stamina even higher regen if you want. The other option, which I would also say is going to be good, especially right now, if you actually want just a higher team rating and have a full team of SSR, that wind spiker position is actually going to be Tanaka, because Tanaka does have a passive skill 3, once you unlock his training, where he is actually able to reduce the opponent's stamina. So once again, this can actually be a very good way of making sure your stamina is higher than your opponent, and therefore making sure you are able to win those points even though you are not focusing specifically on any spikes or blocks, etc. So this is also going to be a very good choice. And obviously, eventually you can replace Tanaka with Hoshiyumi as well, who just can kind of fit in any kind of team. And also because he also have receiving skill, that makes him very useful when you actually need to do the receives when he's rotated back. And also he have block skills, which basically then allow you to free up your Kuro and also Lief to do actually some of quick spike attacks because you actually have someone else on the team who is capable of blocking. So this is probably for me kind of the very good end game Nekoma team that you can build. Remember, not receiving team. Endgame receiving team will look like this, but endgame Nekoma team, in my opinion, will probably look something like this. But for the time being, without Hoshiyumi, if you just want a Nekoma team which is ready to go, you'll be using Tanaka here, and also instead of Kita, because Kita's not in the game right now, you'll be using Yamamoto. Okay, so that will be basically one option. Or the other option is you can also have someone else who's good at receiving. So for example, Hero. If you manage to pick up a Hero, part of the select recruit right now, then you can also play a Hero here because he is also good at receiving. So that will be another viable option if you want to go for a Nekoma team, which is capable of wearing down the opponent. And this, to me, is probably what makes the Nekoma team the most unique and also the most reflective of the original series. Now let's talk about the second variation of a Nekoma team, and that's going to be a more quick spiking focus strategy rather than just wearing down your opponent's stamina. Now for this strategy to work, you obviously want your Leaf and Kuro to use their quick spike a bit more and less focus on their defense. So as a result, because a lot of your stamina would be used for them for the actual spikes, then you actually want your opposite hitter and Wind Spiker to preferably do some blocks for you. Because if you want your Crow and Leaf to do both blocks and also your quick spikes at the same time, they're going to run out of stamina very, very fast. And if you don't have someone to regenerate stamina for you, then they are just going to be subbed out very soon. And if you are going to play someone who is able to regenerate stamina, then you kind of fall back into the first strategy I just talked about, right? You are going to try to make sure you have more stamina than the opponent and wear them down. So that's kind of why the other variation is going to be relying more on the opposite hitter and Wind Spikers to do the blocking for you. So opposite hitter right now, there's only one capable of doing that block, and that's going to be Sasaya. And same thing for Wind Spiker, there's only one capable of doing that. Once again, from data, it's going to be Futakuchi. Eventually, endgame, you can also put in Hoshiyumi because he also have blocking ability. So this is basically what, in my opinion, is going to be the best optimal team if you want to go for like a Nekoma quick spike team. Now, if you really want to focus your quick spike to the max, I guess you can also replace Sasaya with Osamu because he is also capable of doing quick spike, and therefore he is going to get that extra boost from Yaku, and also he would be reducing his crit rate to 0, which normally makes him hard to synergize with other team members. But for Nekoma team is never relying on crit. Okay, they are very consistent with like everything they do. So that's kind of what Osama kind of also fit in here as well. So you can also do it this way. You would be losing out on some of your blocking capability. However, if you do end up with Futakuchi and also Hoshiyumi, then you would also find that no matter what rotation you're going to be playing, at least one of the Wind Spikers will be at the top. So you will always have someone capable of blocking anyway, and therefore you can also free up your Osamu to do more of your offensive quick spike. So that's also going to be a viable option. And also opposite this, being a UR character, it's obviously going to have much higher overall team rating than Sasaya is capable. So that's probably going to be another variation that you can do in order to have a high overall team power. But yeah, so those are probably going to be the two Nekoma team that I would recommend you guys. Once again, just want to reiterate, this is much more focused on having that 4 members of Nekoma team in order for that school bond. If you just want to build a strong receiving team in general, then this is going to be the endgame receiving team I'm going to recommend, okay?